pencils general advice isn't always the best, honestly, because you've probably noticed how heavily underrated this medium is. So whenever us artists use it, we tend to just brush the surface, which can result in bad advice. I've been working extensively with watercolor pencils for over 2 years now. And in this video, I'm going to share what advice I'm talking about, why you shouldn't be following it, and what to do instead. Hi, I'm Françoise. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to paint cute Christmas boots to demonstrate my point, and the tutorial will be up on my Patreon along with more than 30 other ones that you can access for a small monthly fee or as a bundle if all you're interested in are watercolor pencils. And I'll add a link to my Patreon in the description of the video in case you want to check it out. One thing I do not worry about when I start a watercolor pencil painting is to sharpen my pencils. I pick them out of the box as they are. Some will be more sharp than others if I barely use the color, and only if they're terribly blunt would I care to do anything about it. And that's because we're not using colored pencils here. These are watercolor pencils. And that's a thing to be wary about if anyone suggests to start a painting with super sharp pencils. Working with a sharp pencil might be good for colored pencils because you want to get into all the nooks and crannies in the paper. You know, the small hills and valleys that you can feel to the touch or see on the surface. Unless you use solvent or something of the kind, it's going to be the only way to make sure that the drawing is silky smooth and that it looks finished. Now, the problem with a sharp lead, no matter what kind of pencil you're using, is that it tends to leave marks when a bit too much pressure is added by mistake. You'll start noticing start and stop points in your colorings if you're not careful, and you might even indent the paper permanently. And see, the thing about watercolor pencils is that we don't even need to bother about this kind of issue, especially if they're a decent to great quality, like my Faber-Castell Arbor. I'm going to show you and explain why right now. And we're going to start with the most basic technique here, which is just to use the pencil as a colored pencil to begin with by just coloring. So here I just picked my colors and they're all more or less neither super sharp nor too blunt that I need to sharpen them, considering that the drawing isn't huge. But there aren't any tiny details either, except maybe the shoelaces, and even this doesn't require an extra sharp pencil. So that's the first thing. When it comes to sharpening a pencil, think about convenience first. Is it really convenient to work with a sharp pencil, or can you do it with a pencil that's a bit blunt? Because unless you're going to color within tiny areas of a mandala, usually there is no point for a regular drawing. That's why I appear to be so careless as I'm coloring here. My goal is to conveniently fill out that space with yellow, and watercolor pencils allow me to do this very quickly. Imagine if I worked with something sharp instead. It would take longer and it would take more care to avoid leaving any lines. Watercolor pencils, good ones, I insist on that, they're creamy enough that the pigment comes easily with some pressure but not much. It's really easy to color, and all I'm doing are elongated oval motions. That's really it. I don't even care, and I just change directions randomly when I color. Are you worried about all the visible white specks right now? Well, that's no problem, and I'll show you next. So for now, remember that a watercolor pencil needs to be as sharp as it is convenient for you, and you also need a good quality for it to be effective. And that's also because the poor quality kinds tend to be dry. And no matter what you do, it will be hard to color in a way that looks as seamless as this. No indenting the paper, no back and forth strokes are visible. It is the same everywhere, and it took seconds. Notice here that I do press a lot more than I previously did, and only because I know that this will be a shadow and I want it to already show in this quick coloring. It also helps to make the lighter parts stand out against the dark ones, and it's going to be easier for us then to retain all the details in the initial drawing, to see where the cap of the shoe ends and the sole, that area beneath the shoe, actually starts. To simplify, when you are in this early coloring stage, the goal is to just block in the main colors and take it to a point where you just see what your final coloring will look like without the details, of course, but all the main colors are there. For example, now we can clearly see all the colors, where they are, and which areas are noticeably darker already, even though we don't want to overdo it with shadows and keep details for later, as you'll see. Watercolor pencils are meant to dissolve with water since they're water soluble, and you can see now how it's the water's job to take care of all those white little specks in the drawing. So we really don't need to work with a sharp lead like we would with colored pencils, but keep watching because they're smart. So I activate watercolor pencils with a specific method I explain in my videos all the time because it's where a lot of beginners get stuck. There's not a lot of awareness around that technique. Basically, I use little water and a paper towel to control the amount that comes out of the brush, and I proceed section after section. Notice the blending looks almost flawless, smooth, even though I colored really fast thanks to the water dissolving the pigment. And thanks to good pencil quality as well, that's still important. A little bit of back and forth on my part with the brush really helps with a smooth coat of paint replacing my coloring. I'm able to remove all the little coloring lines because those pencils I'm using are so good. I wasn't this insistent everywhere, and you can see a bit of the pencil texture in place towards the bottom of the shoe and with the shoelaces. This is, by the way, fine, as watercolor pencil is unique and I find the looks charming as long as it is subtle, as I like it, but that might not be you. Here, I was also using cold pressed watercolor paper, and that one has more tooth than something like hot pressed watercolor paper, for instance. And for something extra smooth that looks colored pencil flawless without the hassle from colored pencils, paper is the next thing that you might want to look into after good pencils. And I'll link a comparative video that I made featuring those cherries here at the end of this video here. Remember I mentioned how I allow myself to press harder in places in the initial coloring phase and how it's better to wait to actually add shadows and details? Well, that's what I'm doing now that the foundation of the painting is there. This painting is special because I wanted to give it a rustic look. So in this case, I love to use my water-soluble graphite pencils. They work just the same as watercolor pencils. And you can see I am not afraid to overlap in the quick manner I did before when I was just blocking in other colors. I also love to take advantage of this to up the vibrancy of the painting by adding more of my chosen colors, yellow and red. With water, the outcome is always a bit lighter than expected. That's why doing this one hurt, and you can be more precise and target specific areas the second time around too. In a second layer like this one, it's possible I sharpen some pencils a bit more, only if I need to create more details, so of course, a sharper lead helps because it's more precise. And I find that to be effective on top of an established base. I wouldn't do it right from the beginning though. When in doubt, I recommend to just treat this second coloring phase like you did the first. Only you're going to use this one to accentuate the colors. Just add little touches here and there where you feel you need them and maybe place the first shadows. But you can wait, if you're not sure, to add strong details. Wait towards the end when you're sure where the painting's actually going. So again, here I blended everything with a bit of water. And for using graphite before, I totally expected to see what we call in the painting community mud from the graphite mixing to those bright pure colors, yellow and red. It's the effect that I wanted here, so I embrace it. The key is to just be careful when blending the colors, especially when you start adding some shadows, to rinse the paintbrush often so those bright areas that we want to preserve stay bright. This is the step where a sharp lead will actually be useful in a painting, although not for every effect. As you can see here already when I add white highlights with a not so sharp pencil. I actually decided afterwards that I don't like that effect on this specific drawing here. So you can see me lift the paint and create more natural highlights in this way, and clearly it worked better for these boots. There, my water-soluble graphite pencil is actually sharp now, and I can press more in targeted areas without any fear to permanently ruin something in the art. I like to keep this for the darkest shadows of all, or small details that require more precision. I'm adding wet white pigment here to create extra texture and capture a snow effect. And maybe with this video, you already got a taste of how many things are possible with watercolor pencils, and that is just a small part of everything that can be done. So if you enjoyed this, let me know below by commenting more watercolor pencils, and you can also watch this next as I mentioned earlier. So thank you for sticking around till the end, and see you next time.